All right. And I'll kick it back to you on this one, Vibe, if you wanted to respond to it. Did he freeze?
Either that
Vibe?
or he doesn't have to blink anymore.
At first, I thought he was just reading it. All right. The force got him. The force got him
That's my
so
force
much.
doctrine. Got him. I win.
Ruh-roh.
Womp womp.
Ruh-roh. All right. I'll let you, in the meantime, if you want to start responding to these, Azrael. Attila the Hun was Turkish, not Mongolian. Stop parroting false history, Azrael. By the way, Attila the Hun did often reside in Mongolia, and he and band members were most likely livestock thieves, rustlers. You're welcome to respond.
Okay. That's cool. He's still and what is it, like 90% of Mongolian DNA, despite what his descendants was. He tore across Asia. I never said he was Mongolian. I don't believe. I said he was in Mongolia, and where Mongolia is currently is primarily his DNA. So, sure.
Okay. And then let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that's like set definitely to you. Let's give this one a whirl. The Trib One comes in with a big 10, says force is running society right now. It's forcing a more, I wonder if he meant ruining. It's forcing a more secular and liberal society is all. Force doesn't equal conservative, it equals power. Every country trends towards progressivism. Cope harder, you are losing.
I don't think that's for me.
Okay,
He says
that's what I
forces.
was.
Yeah, I think that was for Vibe, because he's saying that force is actually ruining society and it's not building a good society. Whereas Vibe was saying that it's used as a mechanism for by the social contract. So force is ruining society. It's force more.
It's either ruining or running. I don't know how.
Agree. Is he back? Yeah, I think
I
he's back. Country leads towards progressivism, co-part. Bob, you there?
yeah,
I
he's
am.
here.
I'm trying to read that right now. L equals conservative. IT equals power. Yeah, I don't understand that comment.
Okay, cool. I don't either.
Okay, I had a hard time understanding it too. All right, here's.
I think they're basically saying that force is winning, not my social contract, right? They're saying that force actually runs everything. That's what I think they're saying.
That's what I thought too. I was like, I think that's actually for you, not for me.
Okay.
But I don't know how to respond to it either.
Well, then he follows up with another 10 and says, social contract is always existing. Force is always existing. Love the Sparta example with slaves. You do know America also had slaves, right? The social contract updated. It's fluid. Again, we're progressing. I think this is towards you, Azrael.
I mean, America still technically have slaves. There's more slaves today than there has been in any period in the entirety of history. They're just sex slaves instead of working slaves.
Anything from you, Vibe?
Yeah, I mean, I think slaves is, it's an interesting concept. When we look at slaves from the Old Testament, it was just kind of like how things were. There were people that were voluntarily slaves to families, and the Bible says, like, treat your slaves well, because they were basically employees. They're your maid, they're your housekeeper. We have those today. We have people that actually are employed to companies that they'd like to quit, but they have to make the money, so they're a slave to that company. We've got inmates. As Azrael said, we've got sex trafficking, and we've got minors like slaves. Like there's so many slaves, depending on how you want to determine it.
Okay. And then if you wanted to respond to this one from earlier.
Social contract creates legitimacy. Let's see. What is excessive force? Your king was sacrificed for legitimacy of the law. Life for tooth.
I think that I don't know if he's referring to the king as Jesus.
I think so, but I mean, ultimately, I mean, this is kind of what I was actually arguing about, right? So when force is used, there has to be some sort of legitimacy behind it. Otherwise, the state that's enforcing that force is not going to be welcomed if they're not doing it with some sort of legitimacy, right? And that would be the contract. And if the state is enforcing it without legitimacy, then typically you start seeing riots, you start seeing upheaval, you start seeing the society collapse, and there's all these things that happen. So yes, does force happen without a contract? Yes. When it happens without a contract, it fails.
Okay. All right. And I think that was it for you guys. I think we got through them all. All right. Are you ready to meet your panel, gentlemen? It's filled
Let's
up
do
back
it.
there. They came in fast. Here we go. All right. Everyone except for Vibe, Azrael, and myself are going to mute their mics for now. And I'm going to start off with a fun little round robin. All right. I know most of you are familiar with the kind of new change up to the panel portion of debates. But I'm going to add one other caveat. If you have serious inquiries, comments, or questions, that is most welcome. If you would like to come up and insult and banter and talk shit, I ask you to just simply pass on your turn and hold it for full gauntlet mode. Otherwise, I'd like to get through actual conversation and there's a point to this portion of the panel. So Beth, you were first in line backstage. I'd like to hand it off to you. I know you got kind of mixed up in the rumble back there, but it's good. So I'll let you kick us off with your question, and be mindful, everyone, when you ask your question, and maybe have a little follow-up discourse back and forth. But there are other people waiting in line to ask their questions too. So make the first one quick and important, get through it, and then we move on to the next. Go ahead, Beth.
Okay. Two very quick things. I'll be as fast as possible. I got to first start off. Azrael, are you an Orthodox Christian? No, are you a Protestant, or like... I'm just trying to gauge where you're at so I can kind of meet you here in the middle on this.
I would fall under Protestant, but I side closer with Orthodoxy and Catholic views.
Okay, perfect. So you pointed out a lot about to Papua New Guinea, Muslims, all of those social contracts, right? I want to go to an older and far more successful social contract, and that was conversion by the sword under Orthodoxy/Catholicism. And with that, it was the social contract that came first, with the force being what was the ultimate determinant of whether or not you live. The contract was either become Christian or be unalived. We see a lot today, just as you brought up yourself, that there's a lot of right-wing Christians who are pushing to repeal the 19th, get in the kitchen, be a stay-at-home mom, and don't believe that there's any such thing as rape in the marriage. So my question is, are they banking on the social contract, which, as Vi pointed out, would naturally come first, or are they threatening force?
Who is they? You said a lot. You brought up 4 different points. Can you be more concise?
I gave a little mini history lesson. I pointed out that
I didn't need the history lesson. I just needed your question. If you're going to ask me one, what is it?
my question is, again, I'll repeat it. When you bring up a lot of the positions of right-wing Christians nowadays, especially within like the Orthodox and Catholic communities, about like repealing the 19th and stay-at-home moms and not believing in rape in the marriage and that kind of thing, is it coming down to people being expected to conform under the social construct, as Vibe points out, would naturally come first, or are they threatening to use force to push that confirmation?
I mean, in any case, it's force. So we can even look at how Christians are being subjugated to the laws of secularists right now. There is mass genocide amongst babies right now before they're even given the chance to be born. So we're subjugated to the force doctrine of secularists. If Christians did gain a hold in society, secularists would be subjugated to the force doctrine of Christians. It's whoever holds the most power in society.
Orthodoxy is up 78% compared to pre-pandemic attendance numbers. Christianity is the fastest growing and the largest religion worldwide. So how is it that they're not in power and exacting the force that you're talking about?
Because most Christians are benevolent and don't want to impose our religion on each other because of the way that our religion is set up.
Yet they want to take away the 19th Amendment and don't believe in grace
yes,
and
we
marriage.
want to take back. I mean, that really seems to be bothering you. Yes, we want to take away.
No, actually, I don't vote as a woman. I don't vote, so it's okay.
Good.
I'm fine with not having
We need
that.
more of that.
I'm just saying it's kind of hard to talk out of both sides of your mouth, and I think that Vibe is correct when he says the social construct does indeed steer the society rather than the force.
So you can say Vibe is correct. If you didn't listen to the debate, that's fine. I said that the social construct may be the steering mechanism, whereas force doctrine is the driving force. So all you're doing is parroting what I've already stated. Awesome.
No, I think you're just really looking for a weak way to twist that, sir. But that's okay.
It does feel like you constantly keep on switching this, right? I think you're very adamant that force doctrine is real, and you're standing on that. And I think everybody on this panel, maybe I'm wrong, somebody might speak up, that we all actually agree with that statement, that force doctrine is real. The strongest person can do that. However, I do believe that the force that human beings use, not animals, human beings use, has a higher power. And that is the social contract, which could be God. It could be secularists coming together and coming to an agreement on whether they think this is right or not. But I believe that all force is implemented based with some sort of justification that is higher than force. Otherwise, all men would just be beating the shit out of each other.
Sure, until it's not.
Mhm.
Like in the case of Egypt, Persia, Rome, and Sparta, all had a larger subjugated class than a ruling class. Throughout all of history,
what happened?
we've had lords, feudal lords, and things like that who are leading society rather than a democratic system. It wasn't until within the past, 200-300 years that we've actually started implementing democratic systems.
Oh,
you have to understand, though, that the social contract is different than democratic system, right? Like when the social contract is not being met,
is by definition
force...
what a social contract would be. It's where all individuals agree on a premise.
No. Actually, that's why there's uprisings. That's why there are riots. That's why when people feel like things are happening wrong, the people, the neighbors, and that's why I keep on going to neighbors. The neighbors start rising up and going, I don't like the force that's being put on me. You actually asked me the question, if it was me and my 5 kids in a bar and there was 20 guys there and they could kick my ass, Could they not kick my ass? Yes, they have the force dominance, but it doesn't mean that it was morally correct. And the majority outside of that bar is going to come and uprise against that eventually.
Morality is irrelevant to force doctrine. It doesn't matter.
The
if it's
few
moral or not.
already
That's where you're
subjugate
failing.
many in this country, but I'm pretty sure Clay's going to end up bringing that up. So I'm going to leave that one for him or Sasquatch.
All right. Thank you, Beth. Thank you. All right. Obstacles, you were next in line. I will kick it over to you if you have a question or comment to either of the gentlemen or both.
Yeah, it's the AZ. Shout out to you, Sarah. But I think it was a great conversation between both men. It stayed civilized. But I guess we're going to have to use some force right here. AZ, you made up some great points. And I want you to highlight what you just kind of said, but kind of dive a little bit deeper of what you mean when you say that majority of human history was not no democracy. It was a bunch of people who probably did have some social construct until somebody came over and mollywopped them and created a new social construct that forced the rest to follow that new imperative. So I think you were just trying to point out how ruling class or just the powerful have always kind of steered the entire whole direction when it came down to social contract. Can you elaborate, or did I get that misinformed?
Yeah, you got it pretty good. I mean, social contracts, as I stated before, is an agreement between individuals where they're following a certain set of rules for the betterment of society. Throughout a majority of society, in almost every civilization throughout history, it's been a ruling class who imposes their imperative on mostly, which is typically majorities. If they don't follow status quo, they typically would have been flogged or killed throughout all of society,
right?
Or worse. Yeah, I mean, we can look at so at the end of slavery, whenever the Western civilization ended the transatlantic slave trade, there wasn't a lot of slaves to be sold because they couldn't sell them anymore. There was one civilization that massacred these people in such abundant numbers that they would fill pools with their blood, and they would float bloods in it, float boats in it. So it's force rules the end of the day. It doesn't matter about your social contract, it's a convenience for people today to actually think they have a voice when they don't.
There we go.
So
that's what I think the disconnect from a lot of what you're saying is. Most people are conditioned in this current environment to believe like, hey, look, I'm the majority. We rule the country. They really do believe that. And so at the end of the day, they come from that, and they're not looking at the world that you're talking about. They're ignoring the 5,000, 10,000, let's say 100,000. A guy even just said recently, I don't know if it was you, Vibe, but tribes just came together and they were peaceful from the beginning. Like, really? Like, really, my guy? Like, no, ask the women. If that be the case, all the women should have had their rights from day one. We were all just great tribes from the beginning. And it's all been fake. Nah, force was the leading factor. There was no resources. But since you got Uber Eats, you can say that now. So I agree. Shout out to you, AZ.
Fair enough. Thank you, Obstacles. Effigy, I will hand it over to you, sir.
Yeah, the reason you don't get into this morally is that they've been conflating three different things. Well, Azrael's been conflating three different things the whole different time we've been doing this. Andrew Wilson's force doctrine, actual force doctrine, and the principle of might makes right, which are three completely different things. Force doctrine, as elucidated by this idea that projected force is maintaining your rights, that absolutely is based on mutual agreement, which is a much better term than saying social contract, social construct. It's all about mutual agreement, the mutual agreement of parties. You cannot project force in any way without a mutual agreement, whether it's making a gang or making an army or making a police force. They have to mutually agree to be a part of something. They have to mutually agree to the power structure. Mutual agreement is the heart of everything. The reason you guys keep going to these individualistic examples is because you keep wanting to go to might makes right, which we have always said that's all you guys force doctrine people are. Your might makes right, dressed up like a pig. My question is very, very simple, and it goes to the heart of this whole fucking thing. It's a really, really simple, basic question. Does the act of two people making a binding promise create a social reality that force can destroy, but it can never replicate?
force in itself, or the individuals who create force?
can force replicate the same thing as two people making a binding promise? Does it make the same social reality? Can it ever make the exact same social reality of people promising to do something versus being forced to do something?
I mean, it's not going to make the same reality, but that doesn't really contend with the argument in itself.
That's why social contract is more superior.
It doesn't contend with the argument in itself.
It totally does.
It doesn't. And I can highlight how. So you're saying that two individuals can have an agreement and utilize force, but if individuals have more force than those two individuals utilizing agreement, it doesn't actually make it right. And I never said might makes right. I actually specifically said might does not make right. Might just makes.
I mean, you could say that, but then you use examples that are completely might makes right. Every time you use an individualistic example of like, well, there were more of them than you, and
no,
therefore
that doesn't make it. I never said that made it. I never.
It's
actually
very
said
rare
that
that Effigy and I actually agree, but I'm backing up Effigy on this in the whole fact that
Sure
there are tons of times where we agree with no law with a neighbor. Yes, I will throw away the branches from my tree in the garbage with no enforcement whatsoever. It's a verbal contract that is not enforced by might, power, might makes right, force doctrine, or even like Plato's Republic, right? It's just a contract that has no enforcement at all that we both adhere to. And we do this all the time as human beings. We do this all the time.
There's plenty of enforcement. It's just there are like the unwritten rules of it, right? Like the base of it. Even when there was kingship in the land, if the king treated the peasants bad enough, they could just start killing everyone. You know, that's always part of it. You can abandon the contract and go back to the might makes right world. The entirety of human history has been getting away from the might makes right world. You know, people bring up Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was chosen by a panel to be Genghis Khan, you know? So, and one last thing I would say is that because this relies on projected force, the entire force, whatever you want to call it, it requires projected force. The only thing that wields projected force is authority. Where does authority come from? Because it doesn't come from force.
I got the power.
And with that, I will
Alright.
Well
pass it
said,
to the next.
FG. So glad to be on your side for
Holly.
one time.
I will hand it over to Clay. Clay, go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Vibe. Thank you, Azrael, for doing this debate. It's certainly something that it's a long time coming for sure. Vibe, you did a really awesome job. I got to give you a lot of props. It's one of the reasons why I don't really try to challenge debates, because I'm a little bit impatient on things sometimes, and you did a very good job of taking your time with it and pointing out many things. Azrael, I don't agree with you, but I do like your patience, your ability to debate.
My ability to get cut off and continue to let them cut me off and never actually make a full argument. Yes, I did very well in being patient and letting him ramble.
Quit whining. Shit.
I gave you a compliment. I was hoping you'd just take it as a compliment. That was a gift. That was not me being forced to give you anything. It was a gift willingly, just so you know. So I want to touch on legitimacy. And I'm very thankful that Vibe got what I was saying in my super chat. The legitimacy of the law is based upon that someone is giving a balance. That's justice. There's a scale. Okay, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So the sacrifice of your very king is based upon an agreement that is made. Now, that's just one thing I want to touch on. There's so many places that I could go with this, but I want to point out that when you say might makes, that is not at all force doctrine according to the way that you are putting it out, or Andrew, or any of the ortho bros.
Yep,
that is
Azrael.
Legitimacy. You are trying to create legitimacy out of force. Force does not have legitimacy without authority, sir. That is why there is a king and there is a kingdom. You cannot have a kingdom without a king, and you cannot have a king without a kingdom. The subjects matter. The subjects of your nation matter. And guess what? God's not here having this discussion with us. We're having the discussion. The social contract is the best way, in my humble opinion, to come to an agreement. This is my view of it. How do you respond?
There was no question in that statement. You got to actually ask a question.
Do you agree with my statement? And if not, why not?
I don't agree with anything you define my statement. I never said that force creates legitimacy. I said force is just force. Force is just a mechanism. Yes, as I've stated before, you guys are really good at straw man in my argument that the societies with constructs or societal contracts utilize force as a mechanism. However, the force as a mechanism is the driving force. It's not the contract. The force can exist without a contract. A contract cannot exist without force.
Okay, so just to clarify, the force is what's making people sign documents and have agreements, or is it the other way around? Am I bartering with you to create a fair price, your barley for my wheat, or is it because you want my wheat and you're forcing me to take your barley?
So in the case of feudal lords and serfs and kings and rulers, they imposed taxes. They just took it. There's no contract. They took whatever they want. They taxed at such high rates that individuals were dying from hunger. It's force that rules the day. It's force, and at the end, that is going to give authority to anyone. You can look at the massive amount of slaves in Egypt, Persia, what else? Rome and Sparta, all civilizations that had a large subjugated class. It wasn't a social contract. There was nothing they could do. They were subjugated upon by force.
Yeah, and I would agree with that 100%.
This is supposed to be a one-on-one, bro. Your time's coming up. You just wait. A little patience. You've chimed in 3 times already.
The founders called it a necessary evil. You're just rebranding what Rousseau and Locke and Hobbes already determined. It's the necessary evil that our founders recognized in the great philosophers before you and Andrew Wilson.
Thank you for calling me a great philosopher. I'm not Andrew Wilson. I know you guys got a hard on for him and can't keep him out your mouth.
A great philosopher, sir.
You said great philosophers before me,
but I'll pass it on. This is good.
Go.
Works better if you're not muted.
Sorry, my son's calling. Let's see. Okay, Sasquatch, you are next. Please go ahead.
All right, so there's been a lot of talk about force and application and doctrines and constructs and contracts and sociology and social experimentation and all of this. What you're really trying to discuss is where the force is, where the power is, the force that is being generated and where it's being applied. And the social contract is the part of all this that restricts the force that is used against the subjugated. As the people, we are in a position to vote for what applications we are willing to accept. We have a judicial system that's supposed to mitigate the application of power overreach from the government. We've got electoral representatives that are in power to basically represent the statement of force that we're going to accept. At what point in time in all of this does it not appear to be might makes right? Because force is really the only applicable part of the equation. The social contract is a mitigating factor. So doesn't it ultimately come down to force?
Yeah, see, I keep on coming down to this, that we can follow the logic train very easily, that the strongest man is always going to win. The strongest group of people are always going to win. They always are going to. Once again, this is where I first, like when I first heard Andrew Wilson's thing, like, hey, men granted women's rights, because we did. My question always is, though, even though we could cage all women, my question always comes back to, why don't we? So why don't we do these things? If might equals right, and we've seen this, and Azrael has pointed out many different scenarios where might did equal right, but overall, in the whole world, we do see might actually prevailing, but the majority of the world, there's something else that's stopping the force from actually happening. We are better than that, right? We step up as humans and we go, just because I have the capability of force, which is kind of ironic right now with us in Iran, but even though we have the capability of force, why don't we, right? And that's where I keep on having the question, right? If we have the ability to be the strongest male, the strongest country, why don't we always just take over everything?
Because of that social contract we discussed. It is the mitigating factor of the application of force.
And that's why I say that the social contract actually trumps force doctrine. I agree that it exists. I agree that it's real. I agree that it's necessary. I don't think it's a fantasy. I do understand that the strongest male can beat up the weaker male, right? These are all things that are real. But there's something bigger.
Yeah, so all you guys have kind of agreed upon, as long as the people in charge or people with force are not imposing their will in a certain time, people can do what they want because you agree upon it. However, it's still the fact that the force is allowing it. It still comes down to force at the end, and that's the point you guys are missing. You guys are conflating the idea of people allowing force or allowing people to do what they want without forcing them to do what they want, with the fact that they're being allowed to do it. It's just it's redundant.
Okay. All right. And I do apologize. My son, he went up to Pop Pops for spring break, and I just dropped him off a few hours ago, and he already was having a moment. So thank you for your patience with that. Chuck, I will hand it over to you, sir. Your question or comment?
Okay, I hope y'all can hear me.
Yep.
This is for either one of the gentlemen. There's 10 of us up here. We're in a commune. Brick is in charge of the wheat production. Sasquatch got goats. I got chickens, and Sarah's in charge of the bathhouse. And Brick has a lousy harvest. And Brick says, well, I'm tired of eating goat. I'm going to go get a chicken. Brick runs over and steals a chicken from Chuck. Well, then Beth sees Brick steal the chicken and says, he's getting a chicken for free, so I'm going to go get a chicken. So does not the social construct bring about the force doctrine? Because all of a sudden we say, hey, we need somebody in charge, and pardon the terminology, to police what's going on. We're no longer allow these people to steal chickens. And this is for either Vibe or Azure.
Yeah, so
I think this is pretty easy, right?
But
sorry, Azrael, go ahead.
Clay, Balderson, and Obstacles and I all agreed that you guys are just going to make the chicken or raise the chickens for us. You're going to grow the produce for us. You're going to do all this. If you don't, we're going to beat your ass. Then simple as that.
You're twisting. You're twisting my question. You're twisting my question.
Yeah, personally, I think that in this particular scenario, if we're talking like 5 people, then normally it's going to be shame, right? Like if you're like hanging out, I'm raising chickens, you're raising chickens, you steal some of my chickens, the other 4 people are going to be like, shame on you, right? It's going to be shame. Now, maybe the one guy's really big, and then he's going to use his force doctrine to come over there and beat you and go, I don't care, I can steal your chickens. Right. And the rest of the society is going to go, well, no, that's not quite right.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the construct of the society says, hey, we don't like you stealing so-and-so's chickens. Therefore, we're going to appoint someone to enforce doctrine.
No, but,
Do you
but
follow
I think I actually did hit what you were saying, right? So I'm trying to keep it really.
No.
What you're saying
Thanks,
is
Daddy
that
again.
now we've grown beyond 5 people. We've got 100 people, right?
Is he freezing?
Is
or
it me or is it vibe?
I think
Yeah,
it's
he's
five.
freezing.
It's
He's
fine.
freezing.
Yeah,
That
I'm
hand,
freezing.
the hand of
Come on, it's
God. I
always
see
you,
it
Chuck.
now. Shit, I'm running.
Just fold. You know you've lost
There
now.
he is. There he is. There he is.
I'm back on. I'm back on. Okay. Sorry.
Mhm.
You need to steal some
my
Wi-Fi.
point being, the reason I put it down to 5 people, right, is what you're saying, Chuck, is okay. Now, if we get beyond 5 people, we go to 100 people and then 1,000 people. Now we have to go, okay, we've got a bigger construct. And now we have to appoint somebody on top of that. But in reality, when we have 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, a freaking country, it all comes down to the same thing. Like we have a society of 5 people that were like all living together. One person stole the chicken, and now we just got so big. It's the same point. So I don't think I didn't answer your question. I think I answered it very well in the sense that you have to multiply it, and eventually somebody has to have a role, right? But it originally stemmed from tribes, and tribes said, hey, I'm growing chickens, you're growing chickens, I might share some eggs with you, but only if I want to, but you can't steal them. And then
But
Azrael
if you
says,
take
well,
it-
if I'm bigger,
if you take
then
it
I
on
win.
10, if you take it on just 10 people, just like the panel, 10 people, eventually somebody is going to be appointed to enforce what the social construct wants. Is that not forced doctrine?
No, I do not think if it was a group of 10 people, I think 10 people can pretty much get along without a leader.
I agree with you,
There'll
Chuck.
there'll always be somebody that probably steps up and people listen to just because of the natural behavior of people. But it doesn't mean that they're the leader. It just means that people are just submitting. But there is a point where you grow so big where all of a sudden you have to start delegating tasks. And the delegating of tasks, like a president or the director of a police department locally, just becomes a necessity out of growth.
I get what you're saying.
Not
Chuck.
because people
I
are like,
completely
we
agree.
need a policeman and you're the policeman. It's a necessity out of delegation and growth.
Well, whether it's 10 or 100, the same concept applies.
Well, no, the concept applies to 5 people, right? And then once it grows beyond 5 people, when we start thinking about plumbing and we start thinking about all these other things and like infrastructure and fire safety, now we have to actually start appointing people. But this is not forced doctrine. This is like just going, hey, there's roles, and there's roles in societies when societies grow.
I still
If
don't think
I'm-
you understand what Chuck's saying, but in any case, vibes, from what I can tell in our debate so far, his answer would be that the society would be the society and the societal contract that they hold is the one that's governing that forced doctrine body. So it's the society that controls it, but irrevocably, it's the force of those individuals that controls it. And if those individuals decide to utilize their force to overthrow said society, then society will be overthrown. So I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Chuck. Absolutely.
That's 100%.
It does come down to force doctrine. So
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of 100% correct there, right? So let's say society grows to that point where people get roles, and the people in the top roles start controlling the military, and the military have dominance over. So let's say let's just make up numbers, 10 really strong guys. They have nuclear weapons, they have everything, and 100 people. And they have all the might. They have all the power, so they can destroy their own society. So they say, I want you to do everything us 10 say, even though the 100 of them, their subjects, disagree. What we've seen in civilization over and over is that, yes, the ones with the 10 nukes and all the power tend to win for a while, but then we start having riots, then we start having upheavals, we start having people defecting from that. We get rebellion, and eventually those 100 people, which are more powerful than the 10 that have all the power win over
they're
and
not-
over. We've seen this in history.
not
Right?
always
This
more
is a history
powerful.
lesson that we've seen.
They're not always more powerful. And you're just saying society. At this point, you're just saying society.
No, they're not always more
Egypt,
powerful.
Persia,
Right?
Rome, and Sparta all existed for like 10 times. Well, at least what 4
But
or
they
5
don't
times
anymore, do they?
4 or 5 times longer than America has. I mean,
Okay,
at
maybe
the end of the day,
maybe we'll crash, but they don't exist anymore. They
at the end
always
of the
end up
day,
getting
you're
overthrown by
appealing
the
to
people that have less might.
You're appealing to American history, where individuals in themselves have only existed for like 250 years, when I appealed to a Spartan society that existed for 1,000 years. And then you're saying, well, they fell. So, I mean, I don't know what further to argue with that, just because I don't find it valuable to argue against some simple topics. You're like, well, they fell. Well, we're gonna fall. Well, I think we'll fall far before 1,000 years. So if their society lasts longer than ours, then they're right. They did it correct.
Isn't if I could just throw this in there and then I'll hand it over to Ben, but isn't calling it a force doctrine in and of itself, calling it a force construct, like it's in the word that it's a construct.
Yes.
A doctrine, I looked up the definition of doctrine, and it kind of made me tickle pink a little bit because hold on, it's wait, hold on, let me pull it up one more time. I moved it over.
Hey, Sarah, I know while you're looking that up, I hate to be really rude, but the reason you keep on seeing my kids show up on here is because they really want to go to Yogurtland, right?
Get those
So I
kids
gotta
to
take them-
Yogurtland. Get out of here.
Tell them you
Get
got
out of here.
Yogurtland at home.
How dare you, sir?
And by the way, Azrael, I mean, if I can just do a quick goodbye, like seriously, I really do respect you. I think you're a great guy. I've watched your debates. I think you're very good faith. No hate here. Love that you jumped up on this panel. If you guys are in the gauntlet when I come back, I'll jump back in. But yeah, I have to say goodbye. But once again,
Real quick before you
hit
go,
that subscribe button.
We
to
love
both of
you,
guys.
Vibes.
Hit
Hold
the
on,
subscribe button to
Ezreal.
both of you guys. And by the way, I only have 151 subscribers. So anybody on this channel that's not watching right now, freaking go to my channel and freaking subscribe. I need to get into that monetization mode so I can get a Shure microphone and not this crappy little thing I got right here. I love you. And Balderson, I was actually trying to stay on here to hear your response. I apologize that I'm not here to hear that, but I got to go.
Love
Well
you,
done
guys.
tonight, Vibe.
All right, you have a
Thank
good
you,
one.
guys.
I knew it was going to be a good faith debate when I was debating you, so that's why I agreed to it. You have a good one, man.
Yeah.
Hey,
Can you
Vibe.
drop his link backstage? I can't find it.
There are more important things in the world than force doctrine.
Yeah,
It
but
was
Clay,
on-
you see how the kids were jumping on him? That's forced doctrine. The kids
That's
jumped on him,
it.
made him go to the yoga shop. Shout out to the
Anyone
Clay.
who's experienced vagina understands there are things more important than forced doctrine.
Pussy has all the power.
I'll go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Balderson. You are the last one, and then we will be moving over to the gauntlet here momentarily. But just a heads up that that's coming, so keep your notifications on for that one. Go ahead, Ben.
From my point of view, force only comes with a breakdown of society. Whether it's to punish somebody that has veered from the contract we've made, or else it's even going to war with somebody else. You're breaking apart a society. You're not actually building anything. The building only comes with the mutual agreement between each other, whether it's a great agreement or not. That's the only time that you build a society. So I'd like to know what society was actually ever built off of force.
Sparta.
Sparta is a mutual agreement.
Nope, they had a 1-to-7 ratio of a subjugated class to a ruling class. You can also look at Persia, which subjugated, Rome, which subjugated people, and Egypt, which had a huge slave population.
Yeah, and slaves usually agree to stay slaves. When they don't, they uprise.
Yeah, it was their agreement. They were like, "I want to be a slave." That's a great argument, bro. I don't know why I thought of that. I should have thought
Well,
of that.
it's still a construct. Like they have this belief of something that this is where they belong, right? Or that there is no other option. Compliance. Why does everybody pay taxes here in
Because we don't feel
America?
like we don't feel like throwing a tea party yet, because everyone has weak spines and they're comfortable sitting on their phone in their air conditioned houses, driving their cars. That
Facts.
doesn't mean
I
when
feel
when it comes
targeted.
that doesn't mean when it comes down to the end of society, when rubber meets the road, that force doctrine isn't going to be the main driving mechanism.
According to the law,
It's going to be the main
voluntary.
driving mechanism that breaks apart the societal pieces. It doesn't build a society in
Well,
and of itself.
this society needs to be
So
broken
you
apart.
can't call it
It's corrupted from the
superior. It's a
inside.
destructive force. Period. It's not a constructive force. It's a destructive force, and then a new society needs to be constructed.
So, and
Buttons on ice cream.
I do have an interesting situation where I live in Thailand right now. For the last 4 years, the military had seized the government power and ruled the country. It's not a part of the doctrine. They just had the power to do it. And even when they don't have it, it tends to be a soft power in the background, letting all the political parties know that we can take it. So even though the people came together for the most part and voted to change the construct and get another, political party in, the military just seized power and took it and held it for about 5 years. The society went on. People went to school. People went to work. People continued to educate. Tourists continued to come in the country, but they just seized the power. Eventually, they gave it back, but it's always an underlying factor that each political party knows that they can seize it and take it. They are the force that drives the country.
and what do they use to take it? Do they use social contracts to take it?
No, they had guns. They
They
use guns.
They use tanks,
At what
Humvees, stuff like
point in
that.
history have you ever seen an army of one?
Hold on. This is an interesting example, though. If I remember right, Thailand has had the most overturned.
So
Thailand has had the most overturned government in history, if I remember right.
was that government or military
Yeah,
one person,
between two
or was it
different political groups.
was it multiple people, or was it one person?
That's irrelevant.
What's the difference?
So
What's the difference?
as I
Relevant?
said, yeah,
It's just
yeah.
irrelevant because you said so. Okay.
It was
How
multiple
many
guns.
people does it take to build an army?
I mean, irrelevant. I mean, you're
Nope.
just stating the fact that people have to agree to go to war.
Yes, people have
Neither
to
one of you guys
into one
answered my question.
form and fashion. Like I don't like, you're a Marine. You know that you can't go in alone, right?
Are we going to open panel now? I thought we were answering Balderson's question.
It just kind of maneuvered on its own. I'll go ahead. The Gauntlet, I officially have started it over on that channel. If you're watching over on the Raging Tomato, don't worry. The mods will drop the link over to the Gauntlet into the chat. Thank you so much, Guns, and whoever else is over there. And then also you can catch the raid over to the Gauntlet as well when we close it out. Otherwise, the Raging Tomato side will be shutting down as of now. So we'll see you on the other side for the full open panel. All right. Okay. And yeah, go ahead.
I do quickly want to say thank you for actually acknowledging exactly what you tried to sidestep when I threw it at you at the beginning there. The idea of breaking down our society to build one that's suitable, to what you guys want based on, the mechanism of force. Next time, don't use so much cognitive dissonance, though. I mean, it just,
Did
it
you
looks
guys
okay
notice
if I
how I
called it
appealed?
like that.
Did
And
you
I'm a
guys notice
woman.
how I appealed to the Raging Tomatoes force over you guys to shut Brick up and that argument when he shouldn't have been talking during Baldenson's
Bro,
comment?
listen,
Ra-
Azrael,
ra-
I know
rather
Oh
than
my
a-
lord!
some type
rather
of-
than appealing to social
But I don't even have
contracts.
to be here. I'm having this conversation with you out of sheer will, doofus. I don't have to have this conversation with you. I don't have to tell you how stupid you are, but I'm here. Okay.
Neither one of these guys actually answered my question. Just considering the 10 people that were on panel, what do we do with Brett, who's a chicken stealer? Is that forced
Mhm.
doctrine when we take Brick
I
and
already
lock
told
him
you,
up?
Chuck, you're
I
actually
already told you,
arguing
yes,
the
I
opposite
agree
point.
with you,
Oh.
Chuck. That is forced doctrine.
It would
I had a
actually
question based on something I heard in the debate. So that entire thing about, getting a ticket and that being forced against me because I didn't put money in the meter, right? Well, once upon a time, my meter ran out because they have like a 2-hour limit, and I was in a trial in family court. The judge did not allow us to leave the courtroom to go put money in our meter. So therefore, the court forced me to break the law. So how does that
So
look
the court did
on-
not force you to break the law. Your inability to plan properly and put enough money into the meter to where you can actually make it all the way through your court appointment
Holy
is what caused you to
shit.
break the
There's
law.
a 2-hour limit on meters. Did you hear what I said when I
Then
said
park
it
somewhere
before?
else. You should plan properly. It's not the
There's
court's
Yeah.
that.
There is
There's
no
also
other
bringing
part-
someone with you to pay the meter while you're in court.
Yeah, there's something you could have done.
that
to
would be
mitigate that.
social construct, Sasquatch.
Yeah,
Not
Hey man, I'm just trying to help the girl out. Don't be jerking me into your delusions.
Telling you, man. Look, and Vibe actually pointed it out for you too, and you really didn't even acknowledge it. He said, and you didn't understand the debate prompt. He said, force is necessary. You kept trying to defend force instead of proving
it
or
was
disproving
a pretty
the social
debate prompt.
contract. You have not disproven the social contract, sir.
That's
was-
because
it was
the social
actually Trump's
contract comes first, and the force
forced
is a
doctrine.
manipulation.
Trump's forced doctrine in societies and social contracts.
Yeah.
But Trump was never brought up. It was a very fluid debate, and it was never actually pinned down on any of the definitions.
No, he actually did. He did a very good job of it. He said 80-20 split, which is the universal split, by the way, which I happen to agree with. I would say that probably about 20% of people do break the law pretty regularly. It's the 80% that are holding society, the word society, social. Hello, you don't understand what society means? You don't
So
understand what that
one third of people are convicted of crime, so it's not even 80%.
You guys
Chuck,
are
did
glazing
I
around
answer
the
your
actual
question?
issue.
Chuck, good for all these people cut you off. Did I answer
Okay,
your
I'm
question?
listening. I'm listening.
Okay, so you said, well, Clay the chicken stealer over here can't keep his hands off everyone's chicken, steals a chicken, and
Right.
and I get appointed to arrest Clay for being a chicken stealer. Is that forced doctrine? The answer, I'm pretty sure I already said it, but I'll say it again. The answer is yes. That is forced doctrine.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Did you have to come to a mutual agreement before actually getting to the point where you used force?
exactly.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
No, I could just take it upon myself to be an officer and arrest old Clay.
But then that would be
And
an
that's-
And then they made
illegitimate.
people come
That's a
together and say we
manipulation.
should
It
arrest
doesn't
him.
matter where it's legitimate or not. It doesn't
Doesn't
matter
matter.
because it doesn't
Yes,
require a
yes,
social
it does.
This is the problem. The entire origin of force doctrine as a thing is about legitimate use of force among the army and police. That's the entire premise of it. So you like trying to have it make it devoid of actual
Murder has
morality.
no
It's
meaning.
kind of bastardizing
It
it.
doesn't have to be legitimate. Force doctrine does not have to be
Are
legitimate.
murder and killing the same thing?
This is why you keep conflating these three things.
And they say
Effigy, let
women
me
are
ask you something
manipulative.
because I know where your political bias lies. What we did in Afghanistan was that
Well, he obviously did
legitimate?
so well.
It's a
I
real talent.
would
We're
disagree with it. I would say no.
conflating
I
issues
didn't agree
here.
with war.
So Effigy, your summation would be that it's not a legitimate use of force what we did in Afghanistan. Yet
No,
we
not
still
by
have
my
a social
standard, no.
contract, so it's not always about legitimate force. There you go, debunked.
What's the purpose of having force doctrine?
Define force doctrine.
What is the purpose, sir? Answer the fucking question. Answer the fucking question.
Force doctrine is an idea. So the purpose of having that force doctrine is to conceptualize the idea of force in societies.
Oh my God! You just said
Azrael.
Is that not what I said when you was arresting the chicken man?
You can't use the word when you're defining it. So
Yeah.
can you
What's
try
the
that again, please?
No, I don't even want
You
him to
can't
define
actually
it.
use the
I
word
want
when
him to
you're
tell me
defining
what the
things.
purpose is. What would you? What would your?
I can use the
end goal-
word force when defining force doctrine.
I can take
Uh,
it. So
Wait.
I can
before
take it.
we,
Wait,
pardon me,
real
before
quick.
we-
Is the
hold
word,
on,
not
hold on. Before we go any further, the bulk of you, Chuck, can you shut the birds up or just mute up, please?
Well,
They are killing me. I know it's not your fault, but they are killing me right now. Keep in mind, Azrael is kind of outnumbered right now. I think Obstacles is probably Team Azrael, but most of you are not. So be mindful as he's trying to answer all of your questions that it's pretty much him versus all of you. So if we could keep that in mind before we start interrupting and talking over him, he's kind of soloed out. All right. Thank you. I'll give it back to you.
If I may, I think I can ask a question that'll clear things up for all of us a little bit. And it's a question for you, Azrael. I wish Vibe was still here, but Vibe was saying that social contracts, force is necessary to maintain them. But at the same time, a social contract trumps what is necessary for it to be. Can you explain for us what you think he meant by that? Because he's saying something.
I've already stilled Manus' argument. I'll do it again. So what he's saying is by having a social contract, it is good that we don't actually have to utilize force doctrine. If everyone follows a social contract, there is no need for force doctrine.
That's not what he was saying. He was saying that force is necessary for it to maintain.
No, he said, and I quote, because I got it written down here,
He said it's a last resort.
social contract trumps force doctrine. But let's not argue.
All right, well, no clarification. That's fine. Or no, not you, but it doesn't clear anything up. I thought it might.
You know what's funny, Ass?
What's up?
If it was up to all the people that disagree with you, they would use force doctrine against you. To shut you up.
I don't think any of them would be able to, so it's fine.
Nope.
That
The issue is he's saying that it
There we go,
relies
Mike,
upon
make
it.
sure,
It is necessary from it, but at the same time, it trumps it. Like it trumps itself. It's a weird phrasing, I guess. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't follow.
It would be force doctrine applied through the social doctrine. In other words, social doctrine comes first. We agree what should be enforceable. That is social construct. That is, we agree that the police force is necessary. We agree that the borders need to be defended. We agree that certain laws are necessary. The founders called it the necessary evil. You're just trying to rebrand it.
But Clay, it's like saying that in order for me to be me, it is necessary that I have blood in my body. But me trumps my blood, and that's kind of, if that's analogous, I'm just trying to say how it doesn't follow. It's a weird way of phrasing it. It's, what do you mean I trump my blood, or whatever other analogy?
Basically, what he's saying is I get his point. I completely disagree with it, and I don't think he understands the concepts himself. Because in his view, he says that in an ideal world, and in the majority of society, 80% of society, in fact, we don't need force doctrine, that it's a social contract that leads us. But that's kind of like begging the question, because he's saying that under the pretenses that individuals who are subject to force doctrine are already following the law. So, I mean, you can't really say that individuals who are already subject to a system doesn't need the system to follow the law. If it wasn't for repercussions, everyone would break the rules. We can look at children, for example. Let's take adults out of it completely. We have a large group of children who just get to do what they want on the playground. It almost always devolves into little sections and groups of people fighting. So we absolutely do need some kind of person in there mitigating. And from what we can see from most people who come on these panels is adults are just big children anyway, who just like to bicker and fight and actually make no concise points other than the fact that it's my cookie. I want the cookie. I'm right. It's as simple as that.
Where does charity fall into force doctrine?
It doesn't. Charity falls nowhere into force doctrine.
So not everything is about force.
It doesn't say that everyone is about force. It says that everything comes down to force in the end.
That's what I'm saying.
You're free.
Said the same thing, but said it is, but it's not.
Your freedom to give charity is predicated on the fact that somebody utilizes force to allow you to be free to give charity.
There is force doctrine in charity, at least in the U.S., Clay. It's in when we write laws that dictate how much the government takes from it, how much donations you can give, stuff like that. But
that's in regarding the tax code. It's not regarding what actual charity is in the
but law is setting in place.
Tax code is not place.
I'm just
Well,
saying
if you
force
had
still
well,
touches on
hold
it.
on, Clay, though. If you had like some kind of socialist communistic style, and I'll get to the super chats in just a second. I see him coming in. If you have some kind of like communistic style society, they can certainly force you to give your neighbor a jacket. They can certainly force you to do those things. So it's not, yeah, and you could maybe call that charity, but it still could be an armed force in that aspect. I think, based on how you're looking at it, I think you could still utilize force. Maybe the
Yeah.
churches do have some kind of forced factor of how much they need to be working towards helping the poor, right? They have a quota or maybe something that they like a goal that they're trying to do, or whatever the case. Or maybe there's a large donor to that church, and that donor says, hey, look, I'm going to donate X amount to this church, but I'd like to see X amount of it go to this and X amount of it go to that. That is, there is still a power behind that, right? Shout out to Lone Bolt for getting their membership earlier over at the Raging Tomato. Shout out to you. Fourth Wiseman coming in with the big 20 says, back. Woohoo. Good timing. Today's lessons, how to use words proper. But first, you must know your letters' meanings. I'm not asking you to pray, but before lesson 101 starts, say letter N without touching the roof of your mouth.
You physically can't. I did want to expound upon what you were saying, though. You can be compelled to give charity. Whenever you go to jail and you get put on probation, you can have compelled service hours. So you have to give 100 hours of community service. We compel charity.
That's punitive, sir. That's
Yeah.
just punitive.
Charity
It's not
in
charity.
its strict definition is a
Community
willing gift.
service itself is still charity.
That's willing gift, and that's not charity. Charity is willing.
Charity's
gift.
willing.
Willing.
Well, here's a great one, okay? Because I'm pretty sure I heard you say that we don't have a social contract with God, right? But we do create social contracts with one another. So where does do you believe that it is possible to grape your wife?
Ooh.
This is a dumb
I'll
question.
be careful, Sarah, I promise.
No, I mean, I just watched Tilly's response today, actually. It
Very
was pretty
topical question.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet. But
yeah.
I didn't hear what you said,
It's
Azrael.
a
I
question with an
apologize.
obvious answer. Do I have to answer such an obvious question?
Yeah.
I think you do, because this has been a really hot button question lately.
No,
Where-
I think you're conflating whether or not is it grape if you get woken up with a blowjob with
No.
rape
I'm
to grape your wife.
saying-
Because obviously, if your
Nope,
wife
that's
is
not what
not
I'm saying.
if your wife is not consenting and you force yourself onto her, you committed a lewd act against your wife.
So a wife does have the right to reject your force and say, no, I don't want to have sex with you right now.
Why would you force sex? You seem to be operating on the assumption of force of being involved in sex. Why would sex involve force?
Where are we going?
It does require a little.
What?
That question definitely isn't for me,
Only
Beth.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I don't think he needs to answer the question because it's grounded on an assumption of force based around sex, and I don't think that's necessary. That was kind of, I don't know, you went a little too far. Rethink it, rephrase the question.
It is a little bit of rephrasing there necessary.
I'll rephrase it, but I'm referring more to the contract as far as this. You've got within the marriage, you have the expectations of wives from a biblical standpoint that go two different ways. You have what Paul says, and then you have what's spoken of throughout Scripture everywhere else. And Christians always tend to lean towards what Paul says. And so that's why I'm asking this question.
So I think you're conflating the idea that if your husband wants pleasure, that the wife is supposed to give the husband pleasure, or else he may find pleasure elsewhere. It never says that if you don't want.
What are you talking about? No, it's a matter of in 1 Corinthians, it says that you own her body just as much as she owns yours, right? And neither one has the ability to withhold sex except for in times of fasting or prayer.
Yeah, it doesn't say you have the ability to take it though. It just says that you shouldn't withhold it, that you should appease your partner because they have needs the same way you have needs. It never says that you're allowed to take it. Have you read the Bible?
Of course I've read the Bible, but we also know what is said. Look, dude, you're talking to somebody who was in the Crucible crew for over 2 years. Okay, I know exactly how the conversation has been structured within that group. All right, I've listened to it 1,000 times over and over again. You know what I'm asking about. I'm just trying.
Beth, are you asking like who has jurisdiction over what?
I'm not trying to fuck up Sarah's show.
More or less.
I've already said you can't force yourself on your wife, and even biblically it says you can't force yourself on your wife in the Bible. It says that you should, as a spouse, a husband and wife, should appease the other so they do not succumb to lust and cheat on you. But it never says anywhere in the Bible, and no one's ever said that. Andrew's never said that. No one in the debate has ever stated that you can force yourself on your wife.
So where do we draw the line between duty and force?
Duty is a responsibility that you have.
You get what I'm saying, Clay?
I see. So she's saying if me and Sasquatch were married, okay, I have a duty.
I mean, I get what she's saying. I don't think
for
it's
him, and he has a duty for me. But at what point does that duty become a force because it's a duty? Because I have to do it. At what point is it a force?
Right.
Like, am I
not
doing
a piece
it
of meat?
When they say no, and you do it anyway.
But
When they
I
say
have
no, and
a
you do it anyway.
I have a duty to not say no.
You shouldn't have to. Yeah, exactly.
But I have a
biblically, you
duty to
should.
not say no. So I think that's what Beth is asking. Am I being forced and
So they're
obligated because
consenting.
of this duty?
So at the end of the day, they're consenting because of their duty.
Bingo.
It would be that there wouldn't be a contract with God, so that a duty would be that, and then he would have jurisdiction over any consequence. But like if you had a marriage and your spirituality said something was not okay, well, the federal government would have supremacy, or the state, and they would enact consequence on you, right?
Of course.
So biblically,
Isn't it
you're
that
not going to
simple?
force yourself on your wife regardless, but it's not a force if it's your duty. Just like it's my duty to remain abstinent until marriage. It's not force that I forced to me that it's my option. It's disanalogous and not even a good question. Sorry.
Well, that is still your option. What she's saying is I would have a duty to Sasquatch to ensure that he is pleasured so that he doesn't go fucking, or you just said, so he doesn't go lusty. Like that is a coercion. That is kind of a coercion based on now I'm obligated to do this or else, because there is a consequence, a force behind it.
That there's no consequence of force. Nowhere in the Bible does it lay out a consequence of force. It doesn't tell you to strike your wife. It doesn't tell you to force yourself upon your wife. It says that it is her moral obligation to appease their husband, because if not, you may
force divorce, right?
Yeah,
you can force divorce.
The question is, where does the or else come in?
Can I just get a clarification?
There is no or else. There is no. It's just your duty to do it. There is no or else.
You can force divorce, but it still comes down to this. A social contract is automatically going to trump your force doctrine, no matter how bad you want it. So therefore, you're still fucked on.
That actually does not track at all. Oh, you can't grape your wife because of a social contract, but you can absolutely grape. Even in the Bible, it says
that's not what I said.
Is if you force yourself on a lady, that is to marry her.
Gibbs
or keep it closer.
Hey, is it mine? Oh, okay. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We're working on this, Mike. Can I just get a quick clarification before I don't want to interrupt? I'm trying to just catch in. I just
go ahead.
Generational aspect.
Shitty mic with all that beef money.
Yeah, listen, this is a very high tech mic. The problem is, I am retarded and I can't figure out tech, and so I have to hard crash core through this shit. Y'all got y'all fooled. Y'all think I'm intelligent, but a wise man knows that he knows nothing, and I know nothing. All right, so here's my question, just real quick, and then y'all can go back to argue, and I'll jump in a second. When y'all are saying force doctrine, I'm assuming you mean the concept that I've heard before of if all men got together and they decided they could gather. Okay, is that what y'all are saying right now? Just to clarify. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say. That's retarded. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because it's the weaker version of might makes right. All right. Have y'all ever heard of the Muslims? Say, like, if the Muslims all get, you think the Muslims are going to agree with the Christians on what force doctrine looked like? They're going to give them no. Let me give you another example of force doctrine. Do you remember the Aztecs, the guys that like were cannibals and they had the fucking hearts? They killed 88,000 people in 3 days. Okay, that was force doctrine. They were literally taking people and said, guess what? Your kids
That was
are
a
now
short
our
weekend.
No,
Yeah,
Admiral
yeah,
Gibbs.
really.
That was in fact a social contract.
No, it was not. Because this is what I'm going to tell you
I
why
agree.
you're wrong about
I
that.
think I'm
Because
just
they
parroting retarded things I've heard today.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So they came in. One of the rulers that was under their social contract gave his daughter, he was the king of a city state that was under Aztec emperor's rule. He gave his daughter to them to be married to one of their princes. He comes there to meet them a year later, and the high priest decided to honor the king of this, or chieftain, or whatever it was called at the time, over there. Comes over there, and he's wearing his daughter, and obviously they go to war, and then they get killed and they get all sacrificed afterwards. Now, this is force doctrine. This is might makes right. So you're telling me that you think that all these different groups are going to get together and agree on what force doctrine is, and much less say, like, I walk up to Mr. Azrael, nice gentleman here. I'm going to use him since he was joking around just now. I know he's a good guy. I won't get mad. He's the former military guy. I'm a big old wrestler dude with a lot of years MMA experience. If I go over there and say, you know what, I think your wife's pretty sweet, and we got force doctrine going around, we all agree, I'm going to put your wife in my cage. You know, what's he going to do? He's going to shoot me in the face. And if he doesn't, I'm going to respect him less as a man. And so, like, I just think that when y'all sit here and say this, it's a lot of fantasy bullshit. And, like, it's about as realistic as fucking the DMT elves coming around and fucking giving us the secrets to life. And whenever y'all say this shit, you sound like a fucking bunch of idiots with no basis in reality. And, like, even if we want to talk about force doctrine in the Bible, God himself is the ultimate person who does might makes right. He literally says, hey, if you don't agree to me, you're getting thrown into the sea of fire.
No
And he
social
says,
contract, right?
well, that's another social contract. It is a social contract. It says, come to God or die, and die eternally. And that's kind of where it goes. And I'm being a little paraphrasing there. Don't take that as a religious fact, because, you know, it's not exactly that, but exactly that. You're getting ass whippings if you don't agree. And so unless y'all are going to sit here and tell me that might doesn't make right, then you're wrong. And if you're going to say it's social contract, well, then we got to talk about all these different social contracts and different ideas of what might makes right is, and different ideas of force doctrine, because there's no uniform one. And the idea that they all are going to agree, this falls apart the minute we start talking about uniformity.
No, so but
And
the
before,
argument,
if you don't mind, let me just go through a couple of super chats just to say hello to everyone. There's no responses required. Gibbs, I'm actually going to give you this credit back because this came in
Just
right
leave it
after.
on there so someone kicks me off. You can have my money, mama. We do enough content together. You can buy yourself a coffee or something.
Aw, I'm going to buy a coffee thanks to you. And
Yeah.
Admiral Gibbs apparently shooed counterpoints right off of a panel tonight before he got here. So Gibbs is ready to kick some more ass and take more names. Please
Generational ass
step
whipping.
in line if you're ready for that. Fourth Wiseman coming in with Big Ten says, I'll be right back. I'm receiving my fish and chips just to be accepted by the Vatican and Roman. Oh my goodness. And Chuck in Tennessee, who says a big five. My apologies, Miss Sarah. Forgot about the chicks. It's okay. It was just very loud in my ears. It's not your fault. I get it.
And
No
if you're
worries.
on
We
my
love you,
stream,
Chuck.
go watch her in Twitch. Open up a tab. She's so close to getting me able to get paid, guys, on my side. Go fucking leave a lurk. You can leave 2 tabs open. So leave me and leave her open. And if you don't, I'll find you.
Oh, Daddy spoken.
Gibbs,
Chuck
can you
is
clarify?
backstage, but go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
hey,
Can you clarify what you meant when you said people won't agree on what might makes right means?
Sure, I'll give you an example. So the Aztecs and the Incas and all these tribes were having massive populations. When Cortez comes to Tenochtitlan, he goes, "Oh my God, this is the most beautiful city in the world." They had 1 million people in there. That was bigger than most countries in there. Luckily for everybody, disease wiped them out to a big point, and rebellion with the Spanish. Now, what I mean by that is, say the Aztecs, which were very advanced people, didn't have horses, which is a big factor, didn't have the boat tech, but they had all sorts of other tech, had been able to get gunpowder and had able to get the boats like on a larger basis and not die from disease, had decided to come over here. I promise you, the Aztecs wouldn't have had a problem during the Crusades the way the Christians did. They would have wiped the Muslims out to a man. They would have fucking done shit nobody else does. Do you agree? Do you think the Christians and
That is true.
would have been fighting? They are not playing around. I mean, I would say that we're lucky that they didn't have these things and they had the disease problems that they did, because these fuckers would have showed these people what might makes right really looks like, and they would have shown
That
them
is true.
And so if you think that the idea of people talk about paganism and shit and all these other things, we want to talk about different religions. There's in no world can the Aztec gods and Abrahamic religions coexist peacefully.
Okay, so I was confused. You mean
But
like
my
they won't
social
agree on
contract.
what consensus is right means, and they agree that might does make right.
Let's say that again. I'm sorry, you cut out on my end. I apologize.
So you're not so much saying that they don't agree that might on what might makes right looks like. They agree that consensus is bullshit and their might is what is right.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah,
might
okay,
does
I
make
got you.
right, but
Yeah,
it
Admiral
might makes
Gibbs-
right trust force doctrine because force doctrine requires a consensus of uniformity in some form or another in order to accomplish this.
All they've been combat. So I've been bringing up points like that all night, and all they've combated with is, well, the Aztecs have said a social contract and legitimate force doctrine. Wait, wrong page. I got a bunch of notes here. And then they say that,
by the way, you should get that app.
Social contract trumps force doctrine. This has been the whole debate. And I'm like, so yes, of course, any group of people is going to have a form of social contract, but it doesn't trump force doctrine because force doctrine is used to break up social contracts. But
yeah. And
rewrite then they're like,
yes,
but
it
my
does
social
trump it because you've
contract.
been saying it the whole night. You've been saying it's the basis of that force is the basis of thing. Well, the social contract is the basis of all the force you're talking about. All the enforcement is based in a social contract. As I've been trying to point out, the only way you can use force in a meaningful way is by projecting it, by having people mutually agree to get into a group, call themselves an army, call themselves police, call themselves the gang. Yes, it is true.
Effigy,
but there's agreement. There's also agreement that you could just whip my ass.
Yeah, but
like that's a construct in itself.
No,
You could just beat me up.
right.
I'm just like, hey, the imperative is you could just beat me up. I'm gonna fall in line. Period.
No, but Effigy's right. But here's the problem: because he's right, he's wrong. Right on the bigger thing, right? Because of say America gets in a social contract, and we're the superpower. Yeah, we did form a social contract with our own morals, with our own system of government. And guess what? URBO is a thing, right? Y'all remember URBO, International Rules-Based Order, the UN, international law. All these people said, "Oh, what we did in Venezuela is illegal. Oh, what we did in Iran or doing in Iran is illegal." Guess what? We said we got 11 super carriers. Suck it, bitch! And we came in there, whooped their ass like they fucking owed us money. We're beating that pussy like it's a whore on nickel night. And I'm sitting here hearing y'all say this shit while in real time, the social contract that we've developed is causing force doctrine not to work because Iran's been doing force doctrine on their women for years. And guess what? Daddy America came in and said, "How you like the way that dick tastes?" and gave him a beating, and that's what's happening. Might makes right.
Well, yeah, and FG, how would you rationalize this? How would you rationalize the fact that we have an 80-20 issue like stock trading? The majority of this country believe this shouldn't be a thing. But the people who make the decisions in Congress decide they want to keep doing it. Would you say that because we decide not to do vigilantism and we just let the system play out as it is, that is a social contract, even though we disagree? Can both of those be true at the same time?
Muted.
You muted.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to be polite. I didn't want y'all to hear my fucking...
No.
Yeah, I didn't want y'all to hear my fucking terrible breathing since I've been punched in the face so many times. It's rough. I'll tell you.
Or did that get out?
Yeah,
I absolutely heard you. And yeah, you bring up valid. It's the same point I was bringing up.
Well, effigy. It was towards effigy though. Did you not hear that?
I'm sorry. Can you restate? I thought you were asking someone else.
Okay, what I was saying is, how would you rationalize then that an 80-20 issue like banning congressional stock trading, right? Everybody agrees. Would you say that because I decide not to take it onto my own hands and let the system handle it, that I am in the social contract to say that you can have a social contract that you don't agree to, but since you don't go against it, it's still a contract? Like, how would you rationalize that? Because the people with the force to change the laws...
Staying in it? And I mean, but you haven't though, right?
How I rationalize it. This is actually, I was explaining what this debate was going to be about today to somebody who's completely outside of this world. And this is how I said it. I said it was exactly a chicken before the egg kind of conversation. And we're trying to figure out which fucking came first. And Carpenter Tom says, I think I just walked into a chicken, egg. No, it's a chicken with an egg with a chicken. This sounds about right. I think, and that's why I said earlier as well that I believe that force doctrine and this social construct are still cyclical or dependent upon each other to some weird degree. And that's why you can't figure out which one trumps which one, because we all recognize the two variations between each of them and what they provide for society, but also what they prevent for society as well. So shout out to you, Tom Carpenter. You were thinking what I was thinking. Back to you.
I can co-sign that. She absolutely did say that before the chat started, that exact thing. But the egg came first. It had to have come first. House that it came from a chicken who was not a chicken, and something that wasn't a chicken that laid an egg, and then it became a chicken. The egg definitely came first. In the same way, force came first, because without force, you can't have a social contract. Otherwise, people are just warring civilizations.
An egg,
chicken definitely came
doesn't
first.
fertilize.
How does the
unless
chicken come before
sits-
an egg? It doesn't
An
make
egg
sense.
doesn't fertilize unless a chicken sits on it for 3 days.
So
Let's
for all of you atheists who believe in evolution, so if you're a Christian, the chicken came first. If you're an atheist, the egg came first.
That's exactly right. Foul first. So here's the thing, though. So how many people does it take to create force doctrine?
That's actually what I'm fixing to go at. If you'll give me a second.
Please.
Let's take this back to the original social contract and the original force doctrine. You have a caveman and a cavewoman living separately. The caveman decides otherwise. He goes and knocks the cavewoman over the head, drags her back to his cave. Now, she's not going to perform well unless you can convince her that you're a good provider and you're able to actually take care of her better than the empty cave that you just drug her out of, right? So while there is force involved, she now has a certain amount of power in this relationship that she didn't have before. You get what I'm saying?
There's this video on YouTube where this is a gorilla with his wife. He's like, gorilla loves wife. Gorilla mad at wife. Gorilla throw wife. So the point is,
Miss wife.
Miss wife. Regret. You get what I'm saying? But
yeah, you forgot to finish it, bro. You got to do the whole thing. That's exactly where I'm going. Gorilla had power. Wife had power. The power that she has over the gorilla is the social contract that she has, that I'll do the things if you don't beat me, basically. That is the original social dynamic that created both force doctrine and social contracts.
yeah, no, I see what you're saying, but I mean, if we look at it objectively, it's if you don't beat me. So at the end of the day, there is the threat of force. There's force at the root of it, and without force, it doesn't exist. We don't follow laws. We don't. I don't not beat people's ass every day because I don't want to. Because I want to beat a lot of people's ass every day, all day. Anytime I leave my house, all these little motherfuckers think they can just do what they want. They get on my nerves, and I don't beat their ass. Not because of some social contract. It's because I will go to jail. That's the only reason.
That is the social contract, though. That's the enforcement end of the social contract. That is the force doctrine that makes you not beat people's asses.
People have voted that you will go to jail.
And yet there's people every day who stand up against that fear of threat and don't give a fuck about the threat.
Sure, but that doesn't change the existence of that contract or the existence of the force. You saw the woman get shot. That's the force part of the social contract.
Yeah, but that
the force comes after the breakdown of the social contract, so there's already the social contracts not being adhered to.
But
it's no longer
it's the inception, not the break.
The thing is force. If you continue with force, if there is never a social contract, then the world ends. We just all kill each other. That's just how that works. There must be a social contract. Again, the force always comes at the break of the social contract. Exactly. It's not a building thing in and of itself. There's not a built world off of force. There's a built world off of a social contract, and the destruction of that is force.
Let's
go back
to ancient times where leaders, kings, and people like that were appointed by God. Therefore, they had the authority and the force of God. So these kings literally had the force of God, and under that force of threat from God, they subjugated individuals in a small group, who then subjugated large groups of slaves. At the end of the day, from the top down, it was built upon force. It was built upon threats of force.
Who were they appointed by?
It was all built on
So you're
agreement.
saying groups
As
who
soon as
mutually agree.
agreement-
There was
to
no
be
agreement
groups
in getting your ass
and
kicked.
project more force
So if
than
we
they
talk
do.
about if we talk about Aztecs, they are appointed by an idea because they don't have a real gods.
Who appointed them?
Fake gods in some cases.
Well,
So
it
it was
they-
just
they
the
could
gods
say
came down to
themselves.
the earth?
They
Some of them
themselves.
said they
an
was
eagle
God.
with a-
It was men. Men got together and decided that's the appointed guy.
Yeah, but
That's who
of course
appointed-
he whipped the ass of other men. That's why they
Social
fought.
Eagle and the snake. The eagle and the snake
That's
appointed
the
him.
guy. That's the guy who's
Genghis
appointed by
Khan
God.
fought his brother.
Agreed to it. That's divine king theory, by the way.
No, bro. Look, Genghis Khan fought his brother. Other men just sit back. And doesn't mean all men can say, I'm going to go fight Genghis Khan. I got hands too. Hell nah. If I was there, I'll shut up and listen to Genghis Khan.
Well, that's
So
what happened
Genghis
with
Khan had to
Genghis
fight his
Khan.
own. Exactly. But
Genghis
people
Khan got
think
so good at
everybody's
it.
a revolutionary. Everybody can fight. Everybody's going to. Nah, bro. If a big dog snap a neck, 10 men in the room are just going to stand freezing and be like,
Nah,
what you
bro.
want?
One of the satraps.
You think everybody's going to
Persia-
rebel? Everybody's
Yeah.
going to stand up. The guy with purple hair.
Stand up to
Like,
One of the
yeah.
satraps of
day
Persia
long,
did exactly
just
this. He
let it
stood up to
work.
Genghis Khan, and he stood up to Genghis Khan, and Genghis Khan killed everybody. And then he displayed their bodies. You know what
His
happened
whole
after that?
family, his dog, his raccoons,
And every
everything.
person in his city, burned it to the ground, and then he turned around and put all their bodies on display. And he sent the messengers to all of them and said, "All right, what do y'all want to do now?" And they said, "Guess what? We like you, and we're going to team up with you." And he's one of the only people to ever successfully conquer the Middle East. And
we
why
like
is
to
that?
Genghis
give it
Khan
a
was
cut.
appointed
We like to cut it.
by a group of elders
Because other people agreed. Other
like
people agreed to
and
follow
mutually
him.
agreed that he would be the great Khan.
Well, they agreed because he whooped that ass.
Yeah, he whipped that ass. If he lost the battle, they would not agree with him. Actually, it
There
was
is one
actually not.
observation. Do
It
you
wasn't
remember
even a
what happened
decision
to
based
that,
off of
that panel of
logistics.
men?
It was
And he wielded his hordes with what? Authority.
With an
Do
iron
you
fist.
remember what happened?
As they agreed to.
Gibbs.
Where do you think
Do you
authority
remember
comes?
what happened to the
Force or
panel of
social
men
construct?
that put
Other men.
Genghis
Mutual
Khan on
agreement.
power?
Authority only comes from mutual
Hey,
agreement.
nothing good. I'll tell you that. Nothing good happened to those guys when they
Yeah,
said
no,
that.
nothing
Authority does not
good.
come
They
from
did
force.
not rule much longer than Khan took power. He
Force
took
means
power,
authority.
immediately dissolved that entire panel, and just ruled with an iron fist from that day forward.
Was this
Yeah,
guy
and that basically
also-
proves social doctrine is bullshit because he destroyed their social doctrine immediately and through might makes right. And this is what I'm talking about. There's no uniformity.
And made
this
a
is
whole
why it's
new
really
one?
Stupid. Yeah, and because anytime we actually talk about who's got the power, this is why it's like, oh, might makes right and force doctrine are intertwined. Yeah, they're intertwined, but might makes right is way higher. If like, listen, it doesn't matter if you're socially or morally think Genghis Khan was in the wrong. He fucking had the power. He made the laws, and arguably he was more secular, and he allowed people like Marco Polo and other people from out of his empire to actually lead and become major people. And so he made a new system that was anti to the old system with a new social contract because he was so powerful. So when you're talking about uniformity,
Oh.
it only comes down to the power to enforce that.
He didn't evoke the
But you
power
got it
himself.
right
He was
there.
given
You
it.
got it. You got it right there, Gibbs. He took
wasn't given
down
it.
the social construct that was
Yes,
there.
a group
and
of elders
replaced it
decided
with
that he
other
was
by
the
other
next
men.
Khan. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Well, and
Like,
what happened to those people? They're gone.
Azriel tells
But
me that
that's the
his
point.
God made him king, and I
There-
tell him, go fuck off with yourself. Your desert god's a fucking cunt anyways.
And you know
Then
what
he
happened
has
when
no
he
power.
died?
And then you'll fight and you
chose the
die,
next
then
one.
he was right. And then, well, no, then you fight, and if you die, he was
Then
right.
there's-
If you
then
fight,
there-
he
then there's
dies,
no
you were right.
society, is there?
There was
Then there's no
already
society.
Speaking of having the
construct.
power, I'm going to take my power back now that you're all talking over each other and I can't hear any of you. Tom Carpenter coming in with Big Ten says system thinkings for the win. Yes, we are both in the same place mentally there, Tom, which means that brings me up to a genius level to line up with you there. Fourth Wiseman coming in with the Big Ten. All hail the holy potato, which are now chips that are related to the tomato. Incoming is the fish soon. Oh, I'm not a big fish fan, but some French fries would probably do me very well right now. Shout out to you, Fourth Wiseman. Enjoy your meal. It is Lent too. That's why he's probably doing chips, huh? Yeah, or fish and chips.
I want to talk about the caveman again. So why
No,
did the
really quick?
why
Azrael
did
asked me a really good
caveman-
question a second ago.
Go ahead.
About authority, and I'm not sure if he heard my answer or if anyone heard it.
I heard your answer.
I
Yours
think
is wrong.
authority. No, I think authority, or at least a better type of authority, is derived from mutual agreement. I actually think authority is purely derived from mutual agreement.
It
Mutual
would have to
agreement
be.
of everyone or a select
It would
group
have
of
to be.
people?
Who is going to agree with you if they're fucking dead?
Well, no, they kind of have to mutually agree, because by your own logic, a group of 50 people with force can always defeat one. So they would have to mutually agree to be under that person's authority.
That's
So
not
your
true.
A
authority
group of
has to
50
be under.
people with a force can
Hold on, that's
always
not true
defeat one.
at
Depends
all.
on how
Like
much
you
force
could
the one
just
person has.
if the one person's got like a machine gun and you guys got spears, or like we can look at this as an
No
example in
spears,
real-time
fist.
history. We can even look at a real-time example of this in history. Remember
Yeah,
World War II?
Stop
the
trying to focus
Poles,
on the
they fought-
caveats and think of what I'm saying.
No, it's not a
Like,
caveat. I'm just focused on reality.
An army of 100,000 agrees to follow
Okay.
a general's orders because
Sure.
of mutual
What happened at
agreement.
the Battle
not because they're
Caney? What
scared
happened at
of
Battle
that
Caney?
individual guy, right?
Okay, cool. So let's check this out. What
Stop
happened at Battle
reaching into the
Caney?
past.
No,
I've
no,
already
no,
said
no,
that
no, no,
morality
I'm-
evolves over time, and we
No,
change
I'm
these
not.
things over
Hold
time.
on. I
You
know
keep
this is
dicking into
inconvenient.
might
This is
makes right
inconvenient
shit.
for you. Hold on. I know you want to not stop an inconvenient historical fact, but the Battle of Caney happened. They were outnumbered 3-1. Hannibal, with sticks and swords and horses and shit, took out a battle army 3 to 4 times larger in almost the same amount of time. They held the record until we dropped the nukes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where most people killed in a short period of time, over the Romans, who had just hundreds of thousands of
You
people.
guys
He
keep
whooped their ass.
misinterpreting this
So,
and talk
no,
about
no. The
surface
point
level
is,
shit.
the point is, just because you have one person,
Did they agree to be
depends
an
on what
army?
the section is.
Did they
agree to be an
mutually
army?
agree to be an
Okay,
army?
so did the Romans and the Carthaginians agree to be on the same side? No.
Did they
And that's
agree
what
to
I'm
be an
talking about.
army?
Uniformity doesn't exist.
You're explaining
Who doesn't
B
agree with you?
from an A to C. You're explaining
Yeah.
B from an A to C. Okay,
Yeah,
they didn't agree with the social doctrine. They fought forced doctrine and then created a new social doctrine.
Yeah, where's
A
Carthage
to
right
C.
now? By the way,
What's
Where's
going
Carthage?
on? What's going on?
No,
We actually understand your guys'
you're making
point.
my point.
You
Like,
don't understand
people
our
who use
point. We just think
projected
your
force
point's
through
dumb.
mutual agreement can make more force than individuals.
Well, I would
So
say today, Russians and Ukrainians probably mostly don't agree with going to war, but they're forcing young men off the streets to go to the front lines. They're yoking them up out of a van. They're yoking them off the streets. So nobody really cares about a social contract in that aspect. Those guys are saying, I don't want to go to war. They're escaping to Turkey. They're escaping
That's
to
another good one,
Thailand.
obstacles.
That's
People
evading
are
the
getting
social
taken
contract,
off the streets and
right?
forced into it. That's
kidnapping
force
is
at the end of the
contract.
day. They didn't agree to go to war. They're like, I don't want to go to
Kidnapping is
war.
forced doctrine.
And they said,
That's
we're going to
great.
kidnap you
I'm
and
glad
take
you
you.
brought this
What
up.
agreement is
Kidnapping.
that?
Kidnapping
You're
is
living
forced
in an-
doctrine.
What
Yes.
percentage
You guys
of
are bringing up
society-
illegitimate
Who agreed to
force.
that?
No, we don't agree with applying forced doctrine in that case.
They
Kidnapping is
do,
forced
though.
doctrine.
I don't care if you agree with it or not. They're doing
I don't
it.
agree that the application
They're
of
not in the
forced doctrine
UN
is
getting.
the way to go. Yes, this is great. I'm
They're
glad
not
you
in front of the
pointed out.
UN right now.
Do you think
They're
people
not
in
getting put in a
totalitarian
court.
government
So
mutually
they're
agree
They're
to
doing
what
whatever
our
they want to do.
government
Just
does?
tell
Just like the
us you don't get
CCP.
our point without telling us you don't get our point. Like
No,
like
I
we
don't think you
understand
get
your
the
guys'
point.
argument
I
100%.
get
Like
the point.
I
It's
get
forced
I get
doctrine.
your,
It's called kidnapping. Yeah.
no,
we don't
you
agree
don't
with
get the
doing
point.
it.
Can you still man my
It's not about you
argument then?
agreeing.
You're saying, well, you're what you're actually doing is you're obfuscating what forced doctrine really is might makes, right? But the problem with that is you're taking liberties where it suits you. You're saying it's okay to do it in these instances, but these instances where I don't agree that it's right, all of a sudden, forced doctrine no longer applies. Charity,
So just tell me
kidnapping,
all you had to do was
red
tell me you
rum,
actually can't still
rape.
man my argument
These
because you
things,
didn't.
for some reason, you
You
don't
just
agree
straw
with.
man
Why
the
is
fuck out of my
that?
argument.
It's
You
morality. It's
You straw
principles.
man
It's
the
ethics.
fuck out of my
Your
argument.
conscience has been trained, sir. Is
You're
it
still
not?
straw
Clay,
manning
it sounds
my
like you're saying that you can have a social contract that the majority of people don't agree with.
But it's not a social contract if the majority of people don't agree with it.
As a matter of fact, what percentage of people in a society are needed to overthrow the government and create a new society?
Very small
5%
percentage.
of people.
3.
5% of people could.
Yeah, 3 to 5. That's all that it takes. So that tells you that at any given time, 98% of them are already agreeing. Of course, there's outliers, ones that don't want to go along.
So
but
that just
if the
refutes social
society is
contract. That's just to
empowering
say there is
the
no
people
actual
at the
social
top,
contract.
They're agreeing to that.
They don't
shit.
want to do it because it's forced to come with it.
You
Nobody
just
want to get their
refuted
head
social
popped.
contract. Congrats. Thank you, Balderson.
Balderson, I agree with your point that it takes a very small minority of the population to not buy into whatever contract the majority of people thinks to find behavior. But yeah, the fact that those people exist means force is necessary to maintain it.
Yep, which nobody here is disagreeing with.
But those people, again, those people that are not adhering to the social contract, there's already a breakdown in the social contract. The two things, you don't build a society with force. You're not like, this is a force society. There's no such thing.
Tell the Egyptians that who enslaved thousands of people and made them create their society.
And there's a breakdown of society. And even if it's two larger societies coming together, there's a breakdown, and then a new order has to be made and something is built. If you continue with the force, everybody's dead.
Balderson, we already gave you examples of 80-20 issues, though, where the entire population agrees, but the people who could change things won't because they don't want to. Exactly. So even if you're correct about a minority, but even when the plurality of people agree, it's those with the force that dictate what goes on. It's not the consensus that's the driving factor, although it does play a huge part.
They only have the force because the people are agreeing.
So you can have a social contract that people don't agree to.
So that's what I'm saying. You guys have a very loosey-goosey definition of social contract and apply it with wherever you want. You literally apply social contract to any groups of individuals who coalesce. That is not a social contract.
That's what happens.
Mutual agreement.
Hey, before you guys ever got up on this panel, Vibe and I agreed on a definition for social contract. It's when individuals in a society all agree to act in a certain way in accordance to for the betterment of society. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the debate, but that's the definition of social contract we're running.
So a group of people, that can be two, right?
Sure, a group of individuals.
So if you and I agree to something, that's a social contract, social construct.
If you and I mutually agree, but if you and I mutually agree and no one else here mutually agrees, it's not a social contract.
No. I'm not talking about everybody else. It's just you and me. Why do you keep bringing extra stuff in to the scenario?
So Brick, I'm going to talk real slow. I agree with you that you and I agreeing with each other is a social contract. But if everyone else disagrees with us, we no longer have a social contract.
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough. Wait.
You gave up too easy, Brick. You still have a social contract. It's a contract between you two.
Do you think it needs to be worldwide to be a social contract? Does everybody in the world have?
This is why I use mutual agreement. It makes it much more clear.
I would argue yes, Balderson.
Just so according to you, Azrael, if anybody else in the world has social contracts, then another group can't have social contracts.
Brick, if you and I together have a social contract, you and I have a social contract. But if no one else holds it, we do not have a social contract with everyone else. It's just us two.
Okay, very good.
What you're saying is you have no integrity to uphold your end of a social contract you've made personally.
That's not what I said. Him and I would still have a social contract with each other, but we would not have a social contract as a group.
And so it is a social contract.
We would just have a social contract between Clay and I. Therefore, force doctrine amongst the group would be the deciding factor, not the social contract between Clay and I.
Can you and I do a social contract that doesn't require force doctrine?
We can have a social. No, we can't, because if one of us breaks the social contract, then there is no social contract unless force is involved.
Have you ever traded?
Traded? No, I spend money
so that's a trade. That's still a trade. But let's assume that I have barley. You have wheat. I agree that one.
Rick, are contracts enforceable?
I agree that one wheat is one barley. You say to me, yes, one wheat is one barley. Can we trade that without force doctrine?
Sure, but if I decide that one wheat is not one barley, if I decide that you have to give me 2 wheat for 1 barley, or I'm going to kick your ass, then you're going to give me 2 wheat.
No, you just don't make the trade.
Yeah, I
do. Or you just don't make the trade.
Hold on, that's still force. That's still force.
That's all might makes right.
Hold on, having a product is still force. You need something. I need something. I'm saying I offer you with my force or my item.
Yeah, or just take it. Good.
My power. Hey, I have barley. You have oil. Okay, this is equal to that. Okay. Okay, cool.
Force, sir.
It is force. It is force because guess what? Hold on. Guess what happens if hold on? hold on. What happens if I don't give you the barley? That means you starve to death.
That means you do nothing. That means you don't get nothing.
Well, I don't get the oil. Which one is going to last longer? If you don't have any food to eat, then
Hey,
who dies
what if Gibbs comes to me and Gibbs is like,
I still have wheat, you still have barley. That doesn't mean we don't eat.
I mean, it sure does. That's what's happening in Iran right now. That was happening before we even moved in. They don't have water. They're literally going to go to war with another country over water.
Hold on. Go ahead, Ezra. I know Ezra has a clarification here. Go ahead.
Gibbs, you're missing another point too, and the fact that if he has wheat and you have barley, and you're tired of his wheat and barley deal, and he won't shove, you can just come to me, and I'll be like, well, Gibbs,
that's force as well.
Why don't we just go take all of his barley?
That's
also if you have
contract. No, don't.
Or let me show you a different force. Say you also have barley. I can go, okay, well, if you won't give me this deal, I'll go make a deal with him. That's force. That's literally
economic force.
Oh, that's negotiation. Negotiation is force. And also, you're actually, Clay, you're commenting on a real world situation. Before Afghanistan and Pakistan got in a war, Afghanistan was debating getting in a war with 3 other countries: Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Iran. And why is this? Because they had all the water. And other countries wanted the water. They had the pathway for the water, and these other countries had none. And so they're sitting there going, "Give us the water, or we'll give you this." And they said no, and they said, "Okay, this is a problem." So by the force of them having this resource, they were able to negotiate things or not negotiate things. That's still force and power, and might makes right. You just don't like the way that's phrasing because it's like the meta social contract argument or whatever.
And furthermore, on top of that, commerce is an exchange of either goods or services. So.
Hold on, Joseph. I want to clarify for Gibbs. I don't disagree that force is necessary. The founders called it a necessary evil. This is something that I've clarified many times, and actually Vibe has agreed that force is necessary. But it is out of the social construct that the force is born.
We're doing
Otherwise,
contract,
we don't
not
have force against each other.
We decided on contract, not construct.
Either way, it's still social contract comes out of social construct,
and social construct comes out of the group of people deciding that Mike was going to make right.
Money comes out of social construct. Water.
I found Waldo.
Why are they
say that when the conversation stopped?
Well, hold on. Why did farmer gatherer societies? Why did farmer and ranching societies get power over?
Go ahead.
Yeah, why did societies like Sumeria and the ancient Indus Valley in China and all these others? Why did the societies that switched to farmer and ranching and all animal husbandry kill all the ones that were or outcompete the ones that were hunter gatherers? Well, it's because they got together, like you're saying, a social contract, or some chief that got together and saw, hey, with these we can do this. And said, because we have this ability, we have the power, and we can kill everybody around it. The social contract you're talking about still.
Can you be quiet for a second? Gibbs, can I say something?
I was mid-speech.
Hold on, Doc. He was. Hold on. No. Stop. Hold on, Doc. He was literally finishing up his point. Go ahead, Gibbs.
Yeah, I mean, so these groups of people got together, they gathered resources, and they decided, hey, we have the power, and we can outcompete and outfight these guys. And guess what? Their social contract is decided because of might makes right. Their might initiated the social contract.
Just to clarify, what I'm saying is that the beginnings of all of that began with at least 2 people getting together. There are no armies of one. When the gorilla or the caveman was sitting in his cave going, I want wife, I want woman, he was looking over going, I want her. Why isn't she coming over here? And then he used the force because she wasn't coming over here. That was her not agreeing to come over here. You get that part? The part where she wasn't agreeing.
The might makes right part. The might makes right part. Yeah.
And dragged her to her cave. That part where she wasn't agreeing to come over here. That part, the social contract, the social.
Yeah, but Clay, I wanna just describe the situation with the 2 men making an agreement before they use force, right? You think the conversation goes, hey, AZ, let's team up. No, AZ might just be a big ass brawly motherfucker. And he comes up and says, you, 6'3", number 2,
solid muscle.
I'm in charge. And then I say, yeah, you got it. That's the agreement. It's not because I signed a social contract when we both agreed. It's because he has might. He can snap my neck. I would
never do that, though.
He asked that other guy, but he snapped his neck.
I'm not
and so I looked and I said, okay, AZ, you got it. I'm number 2. and then that's it.
I get what
that's
you're saying.
how everybody else came from conscription. From like after that, that's how.
No. Obstacles.
There's a
I'm not
reason that doesn't
the guy
exist
that bends
anymore.
over. You are.
It doesn't exist anymore, FSG, but
I
it
know
was
it
for
does.
a long time.
It does
A
exist.
long
It's
fucking
just so
time.
complex. It's not that simple.
Guy with club comes
Give
over.
it to him, AZ. All right, it doesn't exist no more. We live in a post-violent world.
But this is the point I made. This is the point I made right at the beginning.
But it exists for 20,000, 50,000 years.
Binding promise, mutual agreement. These things can create things societally that force cannot replicate.
Irrelevant.
That's still that's completely relevant.
Force can destroy it. No matter what you build, force can destroy it.
So force doctrine is the destroyer.
There you go. Right back to the mind makes right. If we're looking for a better society,
that's not. I've never said defund the police.
No one's looking for a better society. You guys are missing the entire premise of this debate in general. He said,
okay,
social contract trumps force doctrine. It isn't about what's better. It isn't about what's right.
If we're
you
gonna,
guys
it
have
trumps
missed
it on
the
your own
entire
terms.
point of the debate.
One guy versus one guy equal. The other guy mutually agrees with third guy to become two guys versus one guy. Blam! Mutual agreement beats force doctrine.
Hey, check this out. I got jumped by 5 people, beat all their ass. Their social contract got their ass whooped. How about that?
So one trained fighter versus 5 guys.
One trained fighter versus five dudes jumping in the hood. I beat their ass.
Social contract, the Marines.
No, you're missing this again, guys.
That's a physical contract.
Mutually agreed to be
simplify
trained.
it now. Let me even simplify it now.
You're all talking at the same time, just so you know. So I'm going to read money instead.
Okay.
The fourth, I was happily enjoying my watermelon, but then you guys started over talking. Fourth Wiseman coming in with the Big Ten says, "Is calamari fish? I'm about to do it. What about crab stick? Crab stick is the most unwoody stick I know of. God, that's getting strange. Probably not. What the fuck, Fourth Wiseman?
No, I
this?
completely get that, and I didn't like Wiseman at first, but he's slowly growing on me with every super chat. I'm just telling you.
He super chats his internal monologue.
So what y'all were saying, though, you're missing what Azrael's saying, right? So let's go back in time to the end of policy.
I need an explanation.
There's no wood in a crab stick.
Because it's an
As
invertebrate.
you just explained.
He's saying also it's probably not fish since it's a crab stick. So it's
it's calamari fish.
Fair enough. All right, go ahead, Gibbs.
Back to what Azrael's saying. Y'all are missing the point. Back to the Neanderthals. It wasn't training. It was what happened was one big guy got up and said, you're mine. I'm gonna whoop your ass. And then they had some other dudes that were weaker. He goes, you work for me now. And if they objected, he killed them. So that was force. That wasn't a social contract. That was ass whooping or death. And after he got like 2 or 3 of them, these guys he goes, oh, you know what'd be great is if we whoop their ass over there and we beat them. Now they have another big guy. And so eventually the big guy via forced these people to work for him, and they took shit over. That's not a social contract the way you're describing. The social contract only exists because this guy was able to exert his might over them.
I
and
get
then everything
that. I'm not disagreeing
so then you agree with me.
that. Which would you prefer, for someone to come whoop your ass or threaten your ass whooping, right? Or would you just prefer to trade with the man?
Listen, I'm a pretty big